And welcome everybody to a new episode of Geeking Poetic Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Larry Roberts. This teacher's pet over here to my right and your left is none other than
Megan Guess.
And it has been quite a while since we've done an episode like this. We've been focusing so much on music stuff lately because we spent 5 years not talking about music. And then we just went completely overboard in 2024 talking about music stuff. But we wanted to get back to something that we feel pretty passionate about, I think. And that is, for one thing, talking about stuff that has to do more with our past and doing our little top fives like we've done. We started this whole channel based on top fives. Yeah, exactly. But one thing that we started a little bit of a tradition with, I think, is doing a back to school special. Now, what was it? Was it a year ago?
It was a year ago.
Okay, yeah. A year ago, we did one where we talked about our top 5 favorite back-to-school movies. It was a lot of fun, but we thought this time we'd do something a little bit different. So we decided we were going to do something more along the lines of our Real Talk episodes we've done, and we decided to pick our top 5 favorite back-to-school memories. In other words, it was the things that we loved about going back to school.
Something we all look forward to. And somehow, I don't know how we managed this, but guys, we've collaborated this time. We don't each have a list of 5.
No.
We have 5 and we agree on them.
Yeah.
So this is a memorable moment in itself.
It's true.
This is a big deal right now. You are witnessing history being made.
Yeah, it's true. It's true, because I don't think we've ever done a complete collab top 5. It's always been your 5 and my 5, you know. So no, when we talked about it, we realized that we basically agreed on what the 5 favorite topics were. 5 favorite, I will call them subcategories of things. And we just said, okay, well, we'll put them all together and we're going to just throw out our favorite bits and memories about each one of those specific things. So I'm excited.
Me too.
Yeah, this will be fun. And it will delve into pop culture stuff because, I mean, you may already, if you're watching us and not just listening, you'll notice that we have some things here on the table. We have some lunch boxes and other little things that...
paraphernalia.
Yeah, exactly. Stuff that pertains to those olden days of school. And for us, so we should probably let everybody know, because they're going to be like, well, what period are we talking about here? Well, we're not exactly young.
We're no spring chickens here.
No. So for me, back to school time would have been from the late 70s through to 1990. So for you...
I got the 80s.
Right.
Right up to the very end of the 90s.
Right, yeah.
So.
Yeah, exactly. She's a little younger than I am because I am like old man time over here and stuff. I'm the Gandalf of back to school episodes, but at least
the teacher's like, you shall not pass.
Yeah, exactly. You're gonna fail. But yeah. So the nice thing about this is it does expand through 3 decades, basically, more or less there. We're not going to get into the 2000s because by then we were both long done with school, at least.
Well, I had a little bit of college.
I was just going to say, not counting things like college and stuff like that. So we're talking about the stuff where we were still,
relying on our parents.
Yes, I was just going to say
our goodies.
I was just going to say our parents were still picking out our clothes for us and buying our school supplies and packing our lunches and having to sign our report cards and all that kind of stuff. We're going to focus on that time here. So, all right, enough of an intro. Without any further ado, let's get into number 5. All right, in number 5, these aren't necessarily in any particular order because I think we feel pretty strongly about each one of them from 5 to 1, right?
Correct, yes.
Yeah, okay, so we're just going to go with it since we have this stuff
winging it here.
Yeah, so number 5, we are talking about school supplies. And I know that might seem silly now, but I think it was a really big deal.
It was a huge deal.
So I'm not just talking about like number 2 pencils and plain old spiral notebooks and the marble composition books you needed for lab and all that stuff. I mean, that was cool and those were important, but I'm talking about the stuff that I would get excited about, and something tells me you did too, was the more fancy stuff, I guess you could say. It seemed fancy when we were kids. Like, Meg, what's some of the really exciting things that you had to get your hands on back then?
So I needed my handy dandy Trapper Keeper to keep all my goodies in. That was a must.
That's a must.
Absolute must.
Now,
keep all the spiral, the loose paper, the pencils. You had the little pen and holder thing that was in there, and had the folders. I carried everything. It was a must.
So do you remember, can you actually remember what Trapper Keepers you had? Did you have more than one? Like, did you get new ones every year, or did you hold over?
I held over.
Okay.
I think maybe I had a few through the years, but I didn't get one every single year. I don't recall anyway. I was trying to remember. I don't think I ever had like a fancy Lisa Frank one.
Oh, no. You never had a Lisa Frank one.
No, not the Trapper Keeper. I had the folders.
Okay.
The folders were a must.
Okay.
But not the Trapper Keeper. The Trapper Keeper, I think, had like all the bubbles on it and stuff.
Right.
Fancy little bubbles and all that stuff, and the different colors. I think I was always drawn to those.
Okay.
But it was an actual Trapper Keeper, so I was pretty stoked.
How
about you?
Yeah, I can't remember. So Trapper Keepers, when I first started school, because this is how old I am, Trapper Keepers, when I first started grade school and preschool and stuff, I don't even think those things were around, or if they were brand new. My experience with Trapper Keepers didn't really come around until probably closer to like middle school type thing. And I don't remember specifically which ones I had. I seem to recall I might have had there was one that had a race car or something on the front of it.
Okay.
It's long gone. These are old memories now. But what was really interesting and weird was, and I really would love to know if anybody at home ever did this. So it got to a point where by the time I was in like 6th, 7th, 8th grade, right? You could, if you were crafty enough, you could take like scissors or a scalpel or some X-Acto knife, whatever, and you could slit the plastic and you could put your own pictures in there.
Absolutely.
Now, sometimes people would take like a page out of a coloring book that they might have really fancily colored in and put glitter on and stuff, and people wanted to have their own artwork in their Trapper Keeper. But then there was guys like me and a lot of the other guys I knew that would put like our Motley Crue pinups in there.
I was just gonna say, you cut them out of a magazine, didn't you? And put them in there.
Exactly. We would put like a Motley Crue pinup or a Dio or a Judas Priest pinup or Billy Squier or something like that. We would put one of those in there and try to make them look cool, you know. And the girls, I remember the girls doing that, and they would put their Duran Duran pinups in there, or their Menudo pinups, or whatever they had at the time. So that was even more of an allure to want to get a Trapper Keeper, because even if, say, by the time you were in like 7th or 8th grade, you might not have cared so much about a Trapper Keeper in terms of like, you know, the cutesy clowns or the kitties on there or whatever, you know, like you might have got to a point where you're like, that's a little, you know, that's what my kid sister or kid brother would like, you know, I want mine to look cool, but you could just customize it yourself. So, yeah,
that's why I also liked when we would get our books, and we had to put the paper covers on them, and then we could draw all over it and make it our own.
Oh yeah,
I always enjoyed. And then you got like the fancy wrappings.
Oh, okay.
That went over it.
Yeah, later you could actually buy some really fancy book wrappings. If people don't know what we're talking about, I don't know if.
Do they do that anymore?
I don't think they do that anymore. You know, this was such an 80s thing, I feel like, in 90s. You would have to wrap your books in like
a paper bag.
And you would get an old school big like paper grocery bag.
A grocery bag. There we go.
Yeah. No, later it will become a garbage bag. First it's a grocery bag. And you would cut it up, and there was a whole way. I remember being taught how to do it when I was in like 3rd grade or something like that. And you would do that, and then yes, first you would be like, oh, well, I could take some markers and white out or whatever or paint, whatever you could, and you would put that on there, even though the teachers were like, don't do that. We were going to do that anyway.
Of course we're doing that.
Exactly. But again, because maybe this was just more indicative of my time or whatever, or because of the fact that me and my buddies bought way too many rock magazines at the time. We would look for the big fold-out posters, because back in the day, you could get you could get some sort of rock magazine, and there'd be like a big 4-page like fold-out poster that would turn out to be probably like 20 by 30 or whatever it is, or 24 by 36 maybe. I don't know if it was that big, but in any case, it was big enough that you could wrap one of your books with a poster. And that seemed even cooler, man. And again, it was, I think I did that at one point. I had like a Twisted Sister poster that I ended up folding. Of course, I ruined the poster doing that.
Of course.
It was worth it.
You could have just cut stuff out of the magazine and taped it onto.
Well, we did that too. That was a big thing too. And then having like stickers that you could put on there, because stickers was a big deal. Oh man, let's get into that, because we're going to be spending some time, I think, on the whole school supply part of this.
There's so many good ones.
Stickers was, I understand that it wasn't essential to learning. It had nothing really to do with learning.
But it did. It was encouraging.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's true.
The teachers used it.
That's true. Teachers did get to the point where they started using the stickers, especially like the scratch and sniff stickers.
I love those.
They would put them on your papers, like if you had to do a report, and if you did a really good report, you maybe would get a good
smelling one.
You got a good smelling one, and you didn't want to get one of the stinky smelling stickers on, because that means you did not do a good job on your book report. But stickers were important, and stickers weren't necessarily anything super new, but I feel like the heyday of stickers really was like the 80s through the early 90s.
The big puffy stickers.
Oh, yeah. Those were really cool. There was a lot of them. And again, you could get them either, you could just get silly, like cartoony kind of things with cute animals or cute little cartoon guys. Or later, like I said, by the mid 80s, you could start getting like characters. You could find Care Bears and Smurfs and
unicorns.
And even like rock stars and pop stars. You could get Michael Jackson stickers, and you could find all that stuff. So yeah, that was another cool option for putting on. You'd put them on your books, or sometimes unfortunately we would like stick them in our locker, and we would get in so much trouble for that, man. But locker decoration was really important. Were you allowed to decorate your lockers?
The insides.
Yes.
Yeah, that was another big thing. It's like you had to get the mirrors and all the little goodies that go inside the lockers, a little shelf that you extend out.
I mean, like, lockers were such a statement of who you were. Like, it seems really silly, but I mean, people would see your locker, like you'd have it open a lot of times, and the people around you, other students, and it mattered. As silly as this sounds, it really mattered. I haven't thought about this in so many years, but like, it was really important. And I would get certain pinups from magazines or things out of comic books or stickers or other like little decorations and stuff. And I would get them specifically because I'd be like, that one's going in my locker. And a big thing that I would put in the locker back then, and again, I don't know if these were around, you can tell me. I don't know if these were really around by the 90s, but especially for the 70s and 80s, they had those small, they were like 6x6, if that, mirrors that you could get from the carnival. And again, they could be like pop stars or movie stars or something, but it also could just be like a Camaro or like wild horses, or they'd have all these different mirrors you could get either at like a fair or a carnival or maybe like a little local knick-knack shop or something. And that was like a big thing. Like, I remember having one of those little mirrors in the cardboard frame and the white and gold, like, kind of cardboard frame thing. And I remember having that in my locker and using that, actually kind of using that to like check my bad hair that I had back in the 80s, my awful hair, but checking myself in the mirror and stuff in between classes. Like, yeah, locker decoration was so incredibly important.
Very. Yeah. I had a fancier mirror. Mine was plastic.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you have to make sure you had like certain accessories? And I mean, being a girl, I'm sure you did. You had like lip gloss in there and a hairbrush and things like that.
Yeah, my top shelf was all my essentials that I would need throughout the day.
Okay.
You know, my purse would go up there.
Okay.
Yep. Everything had its spot.
My locker.
Don't screw it up.
My locker was a mess, of course because I'm a boy and I'm still a mess. I'm just a mess. It's never changed. Yeah, you'd go in my locker and you'd be like, well, that's Larry's locker, because it was just a hodgepodge of like papers that were not organized and sticking out of folders and books here, there, and everywhere. And then like, remnants of magazines and, you know, crayons and marker boxes and all that kind of stuff. And while I'm talking about marker boxes, so that was another really important thing. And I would get excited about it, although I don't recall getting anything particularly fancy until I got, again, closer to like middle school and stuff like that. But your pen and marker box. Yeah, so did you have any kind of like specific box? Like how did you store all your pens and pencils and markers and all that? Like how did you have that? Because you couldn't just have it. I mean, I know like in a Trapper Keeper, there was a little bit of space that you could put things like that.
I had a pouch.
Right.
And that's what I kept on my
stuff okay. So you had more of a pouch thing.
Like a box or anything like that.
Yeah, because I had a box. I remember having like, first I had some sort of like decorated like cardboard box kind of thing that almost looked like a cigar box. That's what it reminds me. Again, that's probably going back a ways. And I think at first that's what I had one of my grandfather's old cigar boxes that had my name on like a piece of tape on there or something, and I would tape it shut. I mean, that was pretty ghetto, but it worked. You know, I used that for a long time, but then eventually I got some sort of like plastic, like hard, kind of rough plastic thing that really, again, it kind of reminds me of like what you guys got later with caboodles and things like that, and it had like a little latch, you know, on there. And I remember storing a lot of that in there, maybe like having some secret like gum and candy in there that you would stash, even though you were not supposed to have that in school. But I did have that in there. Such a rebel. Not at all. I was a teacher's pet kind of student. Oh, big time. Yeah, big time. Especially by the time I got into like 7th and 8th grade, when I was trying to be cool, but it didn't work. Yeah, my teacher, Mr. Broholm, he really liked me a lot, and I would carry his briefcase for him and all this stuff. I was the head of the AV, the audio video kind of visual stuff and everything. So like when, you know, they'd be like, oh, Miss Muniz down in room 108, it's time for her movie hour or whatever for her class from 2 to 3 o'clock. So I would go down and I'd be the one that'd have to go into the closet, the AV closet, and get the old, this was not TV and VCR, folks. Oh no, this is how old Larry is. This was the old movie projector days. Oh my gosh. So I had to learn how to use that projector and thread the film through it and all this stuff. And I would show I'd show these old movies, like they had Disney Jiminy Cricket movies they would have, where it was like Jiminy Cricket would sing the song, I'm no fool, no siree.
I want to live to be 93. I play safe for you and me, cause I'm no fool.
And the whole thing was him teaching like life lessons to kids and stuff, like don't play with fire and don't leave the tap water on because it'll flood. And there was all this stuff, but it was made by Disney. And these things were from like the 50s, folks. Like, so they were already old by the time I got my hands on it and stuff. But that's why I still know them by heart. I remember that. I remember showing Ricky Tikki Tavi, the animated movie about the mongoose and stuff. They used to show that on like after school specials and things, but I would show it in class. Like I was the guy. I was a nerd. But it was cool because I also got benefits from that, you know, because like if I would go and I would do that and like say it was from like 2 to 3 and we got out of school at 3:15 or whatever, at like 3 o'clock, if I would go and put the movie projector back, then like the teacher would be like, just go. You know, there's no point in like going back all the way back up because I'd be on that second floor or whatever. Don't worry about going back up there and disrupt you. Like, just pack your stuff up and go home. And I'd be like, fuck yeah. Yeah, sweet. I did that. Yeah, I got to do that a lot. So, you know, The other kids would poke fun at me and be like, oh, yeah, Larry, Mr. Teacher's Pet guy. And I'm like, yeah, Larry also got home 15 minutes before the rest of y'all. And I'm sitting here watching He-Man cartoons. But we're going to get into that later. I want to go back real quick because you kind of breezed past it. But in addition to the Trapper Keepers and stuff like that was folders. Folders were super cool. I mean, it was a mission, like, to go out. I don't know if kids do this anymore, but to me, having like really cool folders was really important.
Yeah, you had to handpick them. I went and I had to sort through all the different folders. Like, which one do I really, really want?
Oh, yes.
I need this one for math. I need this one for English. I need this one for writing.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Do you remember what folders you had? Now, like you mentioned, did you have Lisa Frank ones?
I did have Lisa Frank ones. I tend to go more towards like the cutesy wootsy animals and stuff like that. So, yeah. And Lisa Frank were my typical go-tos.
Okay. That's cool. Now, I would always try to get like the cool looking like space kind of things, you know, or maybe if it had like cool cars or some army looking stuff on there. All the stuff that a typical little boy would be into back in those days. But what was really cool was I remember back around, this was early 80s. They started coming out with these, I don't know what they're called. I think they were just called like rock folders or something like that. But they would come out with these folders. They were normal folder size, but they were made to kind of look like a rock album cover. And then like the top of it had an extra lip that came out that looked like a record being pulled out the top of it. And everything. And I had several of those. Those were really popular. Like, again, this was middle school age and stuff. So we're talking between like 82 and 86. I had Billy Squier, Don't Say No. I had that one for a long time. I loved that. I still love that record. I had a Twisted Sister one that I tried to find to show here on the episode. If I find it, I'll insert it later. But I still have my Twisted Sister one from middle school. It's one of the only things I still have. I had a Twisted Sister one, and I know they made Motley Crue, and they made Dio, and they made Iron Maiden, and they made Duran Duran, and everything that was popular back in the early mid-'80s. And even going back earlier than that, before the folder thing, they used to have, and I think they still do it. I've seen like retro versions of it that I've picked up over the years. But back in the late 70s, early 80s, you could find the spiral notebooks that had certain like characters on it and everything. They had Kiss ones. Of course, I had to have the Kiss ones when I could find them. I still have a Paul Stanley one from 1978. Oh. So anyway, I had to have like the Kiss ones and things like that. But I mean, even there was like Star Wars ones and Superman and all that kind of stuff. I loved that. It was so hard to choose. Mm-hmm. For me, if it was Kiss, it was automatic. I just bought Kiss. But a lot of times I wanted other stuff too, If they had one that had...
a variety.
Right. If they had Darth Vader in there or something, it's like, oh man, I need that Darth Vader one. So do you remember having like special spiral notebooks like that? Or did you just have like the basic ones most of the time?
Most of the time I had basic ones. When I got towards high school, I had to have like the 5-star...
oh, sure.
Like 3 subject or 5 subject ones.
Right. You had to get the really fancy ones.
That had the pocket inside it, and it was going to be plastic, so it would last me the whole year. And
Right.
So, but my big thing was colorful, fun pencils.
Oh,
like
yeah.
Even the pencil had to be color.
Right.
Does that make sense? I think like Yikes was one brand or whatever. They were like crazy fun stuff. And I think the erasers were different colors.
Right.
Like, I love those silly things.
Yeah, I loved all that kind of stuff too. I was always drawing in addition to doing my work, and probably when I should have not been drawing and doing my work. So I was really into anything like that. Crayons, markers, colored pencils. I remember getting into that end of things. One of the things that really stands out for me are those, was it Bic that made them at first? They were all black pens that had a cap, but they were erasable ink pens.
Yeah, I think Papermate maybe?
Oh,
did those?
I think it is Papermate.
Yeah.
Those were
awesome.
Those were a big deal, folks. Like when that first really became a thing, oh my gosh, it was like, oh my God, I can erase pen? Because that was always a thing. Like I preferred pen. I love writing in pen,
You weren't allowed to use it because you couldn't erase.
Exactly. So then once we had erasable pen, it was like, ha-ha. Like, now they still wouldn't let us use the pen.
Oh, really?
Yes.
We could.
Sometimes they would let us use the pen, depending. But certain things, I had certain teachers that would be like, nope, you still have to use your number 2 pencil. And I was like, oh, that sucks. But like those pens were cool. I loved markers. I always wanted, like we've got like right here, like I always wanted the Crayola ones. The Crayola ones were the best markers in my book back in the day. Did you have Crayola markers when you were a kid? Or was it just sort of like whatever you could get?
I did have some of those, but my thing is I wanted the scented ones.
Oh,
Get me the scented markers.
Okay.
Or nothing.
Oh, okay. I remember those scented markers.
Yes.
Yeah, those were
I love
a big
those
deal.
things. So many times I had a little marker in the mouth because I was going around sniffing my marker. Probably explains a lot.
Oh, boy. You would be a marker sniffer, wouldn't you?
I am a marker sniffer. Yep.
Yeah. Boy, oh boy. That's funny. Yeah, I loved the Crayola markers. I didn't get them all the time because I've told this story in other episodes. We've talked about stuff like my mom would be really thrifty about a lot of this stuff. My mom was great. Like she was not like a penny pincher. She would spend a lot of money on me. But it's funny, like the things that she would be like, no, I'm not spending that kind of money on that. But she would dump a bunch of money on something else. And looking back on it, it's kind of funny because sometimes I feel like it was probably contrary to what a lot of other people would be. Because you would think things like school supplies and stuff would be the thing they'd be like, oh, that's important. But a lot of times my mom would just be like, no, let's just get like the bare necessity of what you...
because you're going to lose them and break them anyway.
Right.
So.
She was right. She was right about that. But I would get really excited if I would actually get the Crayola markers because those just had such a better quality. Whereas like the other ones I would get, these like cheaper off-brand ones and stuff, they'd always be like more faint and
They'd dry out
quicker. Yeah. The Crayola ones lasted longer. Speaking of Crayola, I know I've talked about this in other shows as well, but I never got the 64 pack with the sharpener. And I always felt so let down by that. Like I just never, it was at the time, it was considered, I guess, expensive. And she would just be like, why do you need more than 24? I would get the 24 box of crayons and stuff. And she was like, that's enough. You don't need burnt sienna, and you don't need aquamarine. You don't need those colors. You've got blue, you've got orange, you've got brown. Like you're good. And everything. So I always had like the smaller crayon pack, but I know for so many people having that 64 pack was essential. It was a big core memory. Mm-hmm. Did you have that?
Absolutely, yeah. I did. Yeah, and I'd sit down with my coloring book in the floor. Yeah. Set it right there. Had it all laid out. It was awesome.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, it was awesome.
I didn't get one until it was like one of the things I bought when I was probably like 17 or 18. I was like, I don't even need these anymore, but I'm buying it. I'm getting me a 64 pack, damn it. I really did that because I was just like, I always wanted it because I was always artistic. I was always drawing and coloring and stuff. So, before we move on to the next subject, I just want to talk about a couple more things when we're talking about stuff because I have them here. One of my favorite things when it came to school supplies was lunchboxes. I loved lunchboxes, and to me, I don't know about you, I don't know about some of the other people out there, but to me, it was important to get a new lunchbox every year. I don't think, if I did, it was not willingly. I don't think I ever held over into a second year with the same lunchbox. I had a lot of them. And that's why I think I did do it every year because I'm like, I remember I owned a lot of lunchboxes and stuff. So one of the last ones that I ever owned, because it was right at the tail end of when it was going to be cool anymore to be carrying a lunchbox around, was this G.I. Joe one that I'm, for people that are watching us right now, it was this one. This came out in 82. And it was one of the last vestiges of me being a little kid, was G.I. Joe and He-Man. Those were kind of like the last things I really got into that in terms of like kiddie stuff before I became fully just immersed in like girls and rock and roll, that sort of thing. So yeah, I have this lunchbox. I love it. The one I have over here, this superheroes one, That is my favorite lunchbox of all time. But to tell the truth, I never owned it. I never owned that lunchbox. I would see other kids that had this superhero lunchbox because this one's from 1976. I didn't even start school until like around then, you know. So by the time I would have been taking a lunchbox, this thing was already kind of like, you know, getting to be passé and stuff. This is from the mid 70s. I never owned this one, but I used to always, because I've been into these characters since as far back as I can remember. I always wanted this one. So again, when I became an adult collector, one of the things I sought out is I was like, I have to get that Marvel Superheroes lunchbox that I just have such fond memories of coveting, you know, from across the room, you know, seeing a kid that had that lunchbox and being like, oh my God, I wish I had that. But I had other ones. I had Star Wars, I had the Hulk, I had $6 Million Man, I can't even remember, a Superman. My Superman lunchbox is at Vito's house, actually. So I couldn't bring it to show and everything. And then so moving on into the 80s and especially into the 90s, lunchboxes changed a little bit. Now, did you have one when you were a kid?
I did. I had a couple that I recall.
Okay, do you remember?
I'm sure I had several. I remember a yellow one, and I want to say it was a Smurf one.
That was yellow, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then it had like the blue Smurf that stood out on the yellow background.
Okay.
Maybe it could have been Care Bear.
Yeah, because I think there was a yellow Care Bears one.
I'm thinking Smurf for some reason, but I could have that wrong.
Okay.
But my favorite one, and they were plastic.
Well, that's what I was going to say. So like this one that we have here in the middle, this Muppets one, this is more of an 80s and 90s type of lunchbox. This is how they came. They stopped doing the metal ones almost entirely. It got to the point where you could almost never find the metal ones, and for good reason, because as cool as they were, they would rust really bad. You know, if you spilled a drink, or if you were one of the unfortunate kids that had hot soup in a thermos or something, and that spilled in there, and that sat there all day, or if you were a kid, you'd probably not tell your parents about it, and they would sit there all week or something, and they would just rust really bad. So yeah, they moved on to this plastic. So I think for most people I know that grew up in the 80s and 90s, this here was the style.
Right. Yeah, I remember I had a metal one early.
Right.
I think most of mine were plastic.
Right.
And my favorite one wasn't charactered at all.
Okay.
It was a purple. It was like textured. It had stripes down it. And it was like a heavy duty plastic one.
Okay.
And I carried that for years because I loved it so much.
Oh, that's cool.
So I didn't want a different one. I wanted that purple one.
Well, I mean, as long as you liked it, you know, because mine were all character driven ones, it was like I needed to have the new one, you know. It was like, oh, you know, I have a Star Wars one, but now Empire Strikes Back is out, so I got to get one that's got Yoda on it, you know, and stuff like that. Yeah, that was, you know, or like G.I. Joe. When I got all into G.I. Joe, I was like, I got to get the G.I. Joe one. Yeah, I love these things. And just to show, like I was talking about thermoses, this one does have, just here's a flashback for you folks, the old school thermos. And this is how they came, where it had the cup that you were supposed to pour your soup or whatever into, and the little spout. This was how they used to be. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if they still do this. In fact, this one's actually really cool because it's still got the original tag in there and everything. This one I don't think was ever used. Pretty neat. But anyway, I don't know. Let me know at home, you know, for those of you that obviously that have kids or grandkids or whatever. Do you know, do they still do that? Do they still have the thermoses like that in there? Or do people not really bother with thermoses and go, okay, that's not too sanitary?
Give them a can of pop and
just put them,
send them on their way with their Venti box.
Yeah, exactly, or a bottle like this of a little Gatorade or something like that. Yeah, I'd love to know if that's still a thing. But I think
school supplies are so cool.
Yeah, school supplies are great. I know it's still kind of a thing. I still see commercials about it and everything, but I would love to know people's memories about school supplies. Make sure you leave comments below. Let us know about what were your favorites. And also let us know if you're buying them for your kids or stuff now. Like, let us know like what the happening trends are, because I guarantee you I have no idea. I don't have kids, so I don't know. So anyway, let's move on to number 4. So moving on to number 4 here, this is one that I have a feeling you're going to be even more enthusiastic about than I am, because I just my gut tells me this. And I think one of our favorite things to look forward to when it came to back to school was the new clothes and fashion styles and stuff.
Whole new wardrobe.
Yeah, I'm sure that was really important.
It was.
I mean, it could be important for boys too, depending, especially as we got older, you know, and especially when you get between, like, say, 5th grade and 8th grade and stuff, there's some serious growing that usually goes on in a lot of ways, not just in terms of, like, your size, but your mentality and, like, what you're into.
It's important to you now.
Right, exactly, and how you want to portray yourself and everything. Prior to that, I don't think a lot of kids really cared that much about how they were just kids, you know, and everything. But then you get into that upper, like, middle school kind of thing, and then it becomes like, well, how do you identify and all that stuff. So it did get important for me, but I feel like for girls like yourself, I feel like it was always kind of important a little bit, right? Even when you were younger.
Yeah, always, because you wanted to pick out, like, the really pretty dresses, because their first day is so critical.
Yeah.
Because that's going to determine how your whole school year goes, because you're going to, like, I was a dork last year. I'm not going to be a dork this year. This is the new me. Look how much I grew over summer break. And then you're still the same person. It's never going to change. But that's your mindset that first day. It's so vital that first day to set that impression.
I don't want to be too judgmental and I'm not being, because I think this very much applies to me, but something tells me that no matter how hard you tried, you still wound up being the dork of that next year, even though
Absolutely.
You tried. Yeah. It's like, I'm not going to be looked at as the dork like I was last year. And then you'd come back and you're
totally
like, no,
stay on. Absolutely.
You're still a dork.
Like, well, crap.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
There's always next year. We'll try again.
Yep.
So, but I tried.
Yeah. The only time that ever changed for me was when I changed schools finally. And that was halfway through high school. Like when I went over to Whiting High School and stuff, then during that summer, I was able to grow out my hair a little bit, and I was able to finally go and, like, wear the clothes I wanted to, because they didn't have a dress code, whereas the first 2 years of high school, I was in a Catholic school, so it was, like, strict dress code, very short hair, just awful. And, so that was the only time, because it was, like, new people, new style, whole new beginning kind of thing, that I really got to, even though I think it was pretty obvious that I wasn't necessarily the coolest guy around. It was like, now he's just a dork with cooler look to him or whatever, you know. But all through grade school and stuff, it was just hopeless. It was just hopeless, man. Yeah, and you could very clearly, if you look at old pictures of me, you can tell that, you know, my mother dressed me and stuff. There was a lot of odd color combinations, which a lot of kids could relate to, especially in the 70s and 80s. There was a lot of, it didn't really become a thing, I think, for kids to start being a little bit more overall fashion conscious and stuff until probably later in the 80s. I think that's when kid consumers became more of a thing, and they started really, you know, marketing cooler, hipper clothes towards younger kids and stuff, whereas previously I feel like it had been only really more towards maybe like teenagers and stuff, you know. By the time you're a teenager, then like they started marketing more specific fashion things and stuff. But if you were grade school, they were like, oh, you're just a kid, you know, who cares, you know. That changed a little bit, probably more in your time than my time.
Maybe towards the end. I was still very questionably dressed at times. But I do remember several things, that, like some dresses and stuff, because I was always a dress girl.
Okay.
I was a girly girl. I needed the dresses, the frilly socks, the fancy shoes.
Okay.
Not just for Easter. I wanted them every single day.
Oh, boy. That's funny.
Yeah. That's how my mom potty trained me. Believe it or not, she promised me pretty panties. And I was like, all right, I did it. Where's my panties, woman?
Wow.
That's exactly how it happened.
Wow.
Like in my first try, I was like, okay, I'm done with this diaper thing. Give me my panties. I want my frilly stuff. Give me my girly girls.
Wow.
So everybody needs to know that now.
That's great. Yeah. That's wow. Potty for panties. Okay.
Potty for panties. Absolutely.
Okay. I don't even know what to say to that. I have no idea.
So anyway.
Yeah, I did. You know, for me, like I said, throughout most of grade school and stuff, fashion wasn't that important to me. I wish it would have been. I might have been cooler then, but I didn't really think about it that much. it wasn't until, again, I got more into later in middle school and stuff, junior high, that sort of thing. It wasn't until then that I started like branching out and being like, well, you know, because by that point, rock shirts became more of a thing, you know, T-shirts with bands on it or stuff like that.
Yeah, because that wasn't a thing before.
No, it was in the 70s. I mean, you had like the iron-on shirts and stuff, you know, and you'd have some, and I did when I was a kid. I remember I had a sweatshirt that Queen, you know, the band Queen sweatshirt. Of course, it was yellow. Still not very rock and roll. And I had Kiss iron-on shirts and stuff. And then otherwise it was kids wearing like shirts with iron-ons of like John Travolta or Star Wars or Keep On Truckin' or something like that. Or Convoy, you know, or something like this. CB McCall and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, the real like rock kid look did not really come into play more until like the start of the 80s and stuff. So then by the time I got into junior high, then it became like, okay, I need rock shirts. Like I need, again, just like with my folders and all that stuff, I need to represent, you know. So that's how it started, with Larry wearing a lot of black shirts and blue jeans, you know. Didn't get into the black jeans until later on, until high school, but that became sort of my thing. So I mean, there was an element still of like new school year, like I got to get some new shirts like that. I remember one year my mom taking me, we went to Sears, of all things. We went to Sears, and it was starting, I think it would have been starting 7th grade. So this was around 1984. And she took me to Sears, and she was like, we got to get you new school clothes, because I'd grown out of everything. I lost a bunch of weight that summer. My dad made me exercise and was like, you are not going to be the fat kid, because I was getting that way. I was getting to be the chubby, fat, dorky kid. And my dad, thank goodness, was smart enough, because he'd lived through it and everything. He was like, no, we're going to get your ass in shape so you don't get your ass handed to you, you know, by other kids and stuff. And he did. He made me work out that whole summer between 6th and 7th grade. And I hated every bit of it. But then as time went by, like I got better at it. Like I started, you know, I was doing push-ups and sit-ups and burpees and all these things and stuff. And you know, he'd tell me, get on you're not doing anything today? All right, you still got an hour and a half of sunlight before the streetlights come on. Get on your bike and go ride. And that's what I did. I would ride around the neighborhood. This was like, you know, and this was all the way up until the end of August when school would start. I'd ride around the neighborhood I didn't even have a Walkman at the time. I just had my little tiny boom box, and I'd put in my tape of whatever, and I'd go just riding around it, you know, because at that point I didn't have like a posse of a lot of friends. I had a couple of good friends and stuff, but not many. And I would just ride around and sweat it off and work it off. So by the time I got back to school that September, I was like much more skinny, and it was great. And I mean, I remember like other kids making comments to me about it, being like, oh wow, Larry, like you really look like you're in better shape and stuff than when they'd seen me back in May. Mm-hmm. And that was a great feeling. Like I was like, oh wow, oh okay, cool. Like, cause having lived through it, I wasn't as conscious of it myself.
Right.
But anyway, I remember going to the store with my mom that August, September, and her being like, well, we got to get you new clothes because you're grown out of these other ones. You're skinnier and you're tall, a little bit taller. I wasn't tall enough, but I was a little taller. And we went to Sears, and we were looking for like your average stuff. Here's some new jeans. And I saw a rack there that was a bunch of band shirts. Now, this was new, folks. Like, you can go into Walmart and Target and stuff now and find all kinds of band shirts. You can get Metallica and Slayer and all sorts of crazy shit now at your local, you know, department store type place. That was new for the early 80s, mid 80s. And I walked in, and there was like Quiet Riot, Rat, Twisted Sister, Motley Crue, Kiss. I was like, oh my God, I'm in heaven.
One of each, please.
And what's funny is, so my mom, previously to that, now she had been a little bit resistant to getting me shirts like that, like rock shirts like that. For one thing, they were a little expensive. If we went to the local record store, like Hegwish Records and these places that I went to, they weren't like cheap, you know what I mean? Like one of those shirts could cost like $12, which in 1984 was a lot of money. You know, that would be like $35 now or something like that. So she was a little resistant to that, but we went to Sears, and because it was Sears and she could use her Sears card and all that stuff, and it was in with all the other back to school clothes, she was just like, oh, okay, I'll get you whatever you want of these. And I was like, bingo. So I got like a whole slew of them, and I still have my Twisted Sister one that you've even worn on the show before. That sleeveless Twisted Sister shirt that Meg has worn because that tells you because it fits her.
Yeah, you lost a lot of weight because that fits me now.
Yeah. That's how small I was back at the time because she can wear it. I obviously cannot wear it. But granted, I mean, come on, I was like 11 or 12 or something. I was like, but yeah, you could. So anyway, I still have that shirt. I've saved it. The rest of them are gone, but I still have my Twisted Sister one. But anyway, yeah. So that was kind of like my excitement. And then as I got into high school, and especially later in high school, it became very important, like how I looked in fashion wise. So I would get very excited about getting new clothes, getting new sneakers. Sneakers was the really big thing, and it still is from what I can tell.
Boys, yeah.
Yeah, sneakers is the, gym shoes, sneakers, whatever you want to call them, trainers, whatever you're from, what you call them. Yeah, that was even a big thing, and I lived through that. I was in junior high back when like the Jordans came out and stuff like that, or I was in high school actually when the Jordans came out, and remember that was like a big thing. And I didn't care so much for the Jordans, but I liked a lot of the ones that were similar to that. And then I was an 80s, 90s metal guy, so of course my whole look for years there was black shirt, black jeans, white high tops. That was like the metal guy look. You had to do that. Some guys were like the shorts, the camouflage shorts and the sneakers and the black shirt. I was never the shorts guy. I was always like the tight jeans guy. And I still am. So I have not. I don't know why I'm talking about this. Like, this is like old memories. It's like, Larry, you're the fucking same. You haven't changed since 1988.
You found a look that works for you. You stuck with it.
I just don't know what else to do. I don't know what else to do with myself, to be honest with you. But yeah, I've basically, other than like the facial hair and weight, I basically have looked like this since 1988. So I'm not going to try to fool anybody at home into thinking, there's been any progression with me. So this is, so I'm still stuck on whatever I got into with that kind of fashion from that era. All right, so we're going to move on now to number 3. So number 3 for us, this is something I know you and I definitely were in agreement with, but I think we have different angles on this because we grew up in very different ways and being and participating in different types of stuff.
Yes.
So this one, we are talking about looking forward to the new year of school events. Now that seems kind of broad, I realize, but we'll explain like what we're talking about. School events, that's like looking forward to different things that specifically didn't happen in the summer. It only happened because it was related to school. So it could be like school related parties and outings and sports things or after school club type things and stuff like that. So I know I was never really, I was a loner. I was an outsider. All I ever cared about was music, and I should have joined band, but I didn't even have that opportunity until very, very late in my schooling. I was never at a school that even had band.
Oh, wow.
Or band related stuff that I could be a part of until I was like 15 years old. So, and by that point I was like, well, I got a band, I was at 15 years old.
Playing your own music. So.
At 15 years old, I was writing my own music and I was already playing in clubs and like sneaking into clubs playing when I was way too young to be there, but I was often playing with older dudes and stuff. Mm-hmm. So like by that point I was like, I don't need to be in this school stuff, but I should say, especially since I don't know if she'll watch this, but my old music teacher from Whiting High School, Miss Linz, I still talk to her. She's super cool, and she might even watch or listen to this. So I do have to say that she did, in junior year, I had a music class with her, and she's still one of my favorite people in the world. And she talked me into joining choir for senior year. And I did it. And unfortunately, Miss Linz, I always, when I do talk to her, I guilt trip her about this. She left during the summer, so she wasn't my choir teacher for senior year. We had a new teacher, and the new teacher, she was a nice enough lady, but we didn't see eye to eye, and she didn't like appreciate anything about me. I think she kind of saw this long-haired, heavy metal high school kid and was like, And which was a shame, because I feel like had it been Miss Lynn's, I would have been nurtured better, and Miss Lynn's was smart, because she was a rocker too, she was into rock stuff and everything. She would have known how to utilize me and keep me enthused and stuff, and she would have picked better music. I hated the music that they picked for us to sing in senior year, and I would get really annoyed real quick. I would get really annoyed with people would say, well, because I almost flunked out. How do you flunk choir, right? I almost flunked choir. I just barely passed it. And the only reason that happened is because I was so mad, for one, about Miss Lynn's not being there. 2, for me not seeing eye to eye with this new teacher. And 3, she wasn't good at getting the class to be involved. This wasn't Glee. You know what I mean? Like, this wasn't something where everybody in the class was like, yeah! Like, the class, most of them looked at it as like a fuck off. Like, they didn't care. And as somebody who loved music, in general, all music, even choir music, I was so offended by that. I used to get so mad at the other students, because I'd be like, come on, man. Like, we sound terrible. Like, you guys aren't taking this seriously at all. And I was a little snobby about it, being honest with you. I got snobby about it. I was like, I'm too good to be singing with these kids that are, and again, not towards the kids that were legitimately trying to take it seriously and trying to sing.
It's a class.
It was the ones that were blowing it off, and I got really mad about that, because we went out and did like a choir concert somewhere. I think it was at South Lake Mall. Mm-hmm. We had to do like a choir concert appearance thing, and we were terrible. And I knew it, even at 16 years old or whatever. I was like, this is awful. And I was so offended and embarrassed. You know how I feel about that? I'm like, I do not want to be out here being embarrassed because other people aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing and making it sound bad and making me sound bad. So after that, I was like, I'm not going to these concerts anymore. I blew it off. I wouldn't go. I went to like maybe one more, and it was like the same thing. And I was like, I'm not doing this, which sucked, because I was also offended because you basically got graded by showing up. And I was like, really? You're not getting graded on how much effort you're putting into trying to at least try to sound good. You're just getting graded on showing up. So me, because I am rebellious, I was like, fuck that then. I'm not going. I'm not doing it. I'm not going to go. And then so me, the most musical minded one, or I'm one that might not have been the only one. I'm sure there were other people in the class who could sing, and good on them that they obviously had more patience than I did, because if there's one thing we know is that I don't have a lot of patience for this kind of thing. And so they stuck through it, but I didn't. And I showed up just enough, I think, to get like a D, and I passed, but of all things, be like, yeah, that'd be like finding out that
you flunked choir. That was.
Yeah, that of all things that I would almost flunk, it would be the music class. And it was only because of that, because, if Miss Lynn's had been there, it would have been a different story. But I know you were involved in musical functions.
Yeah, at least musical person here. Yes. Yes, I was. I did band in middle school. Mm-hmm. I played the clarinet.
Oh boy.
We went to the recitals, and we went to festivals and competitions and stuff like that, and it was a lot of fun. I liked the band trips. I always look forward to going on the field and playing the football game, and playing up in the stands and doing the marching band. I had a blast doing all that, and we worked the concession stands for the football.
Oh, that's cool.
As part of it, and it was a lot of fun. I really, really loved band.
Yeah.
I don't know why I didn't do it when I moved to here, Indiana. Yeah, right. But again, I think I was trying to, I'm not a dork. I'm going to be cool. When I move here, I'm going to start this whole new school.
Yeah. Did it work?
No, it did not, because I joined other things to compensate for that.
Yeah. So what other things did you join? What other stuff did you look forward to?
In middle school, I also did choir.
Okay.
I did do choir as well. And
so that one we have in common.
Yeah, so I really enjoyed choir. The performing, the shows. I have very fond memories of Beauty and the Beast show that we did.
Oh, cool.
And I remember the choreography A lot of it still, I remember.
Oh,
I did it. I reenacted it for many, many years following because I am a dork. But that was a blast. That was my biggest memory. Again, I was in choir. I wasn't any good. Nobody wants to hear that, but I had other people to drown me out. So I had like the opposite that you had where I was the bad person, but I was trying.
That's all that matters. That's all that matters.
I was putting all my effort in. I learned all the choreography. I learned the steps in marching bands.
Yeah, and that's what matters.
Yeah.
Like I said, I didn't get mad if somebody couldn't sing that well or something. I get mad because they'd be like, I don't care.
Yeah,
I'm like,
I'm just gonna do what I want.
And I'd be like, there were times I'd even try to like help some of the kids. They'd be like, I don't give a shit about this, and I'm like, okay, what am I doing here then?
Yeah, thankfully I don't recall any of that, or I just didn't pay attention to it. But then when I moved here,
right,
I joined the school's TV station.
Okay.
So I was out as a reporter doing filming, recording, and editing and all that. So
which
that was a lot
leads
of
to
fun.
what we're doing here.
Yep.
Yep.
I did the radio station
Mm-hmm.
that was there. I did that every morning and lunch hour. Absolutely loved that. That's where I learned a lot of music because I didn't before that.
Yeah.
But that was always my hangout spot. And I did yearbook because I love writing. So I joined yearbook. I had did that after school. Went and got pictures and interviewed
You've got
people.
yearbooks over here, don't you?
I have some. These are like my grade school yearbooks and middle school yearbooks. So I have like my kindergarten.
Oh, wow.
one, and I have my 8th grade one.
Oh, wow. You run the gamut. So you've got kindergarten and 8th grade.
Up through that. And I have my senior one the only one I don't have is my senior.
Oh, okay.
And I actually, because I have my high school reunion going on this week.
Yeah.
Ends.
Okay.
25 years.
Oh, that's timely.
Yeah.
There you go.
And my senior yearbook's the only one I don't have, and it's like $100, but they were always expensive.
Yeah.
So I really considered it because that's the only one I did not actually get. But I have all my others somewhere because that was a big deal to me too. Was make sure I got that ordered early as possible. Especially because I was writing for them.
You were right. You did the paper.
Deal.
Don't you have a paper?
Yeah. So I also did the newspaper in high school. Oh, they're over here. So yeah, my newspaper, and I think on the back of this one. Yep, look at that, Miss Megan Shelton, and I was the news editor this year for the paper. So
fancy pants.
Fancy, yep. So I got a whole bunch of these guys, because I'm a dork. Yeah, and the football games are always fun to go to, so I always make sure I got the yearly pamphlet thing there, and then a Key Club.
Right.
Was the last club that I joined in high school. I think I did that sophomore year.
Okay.
Or maybe freshman year. I'm not for sure because my one friend I made almost immediately. I was like, I got to make a friend somewhere. But she introduced me to Key Club. I was like, what the heck is Key Club? But again, I made a lot of friends in there. Maid of honor at my wedding was part of the Key Club. That's how I met her and all that. But it was a lot of like volunteering our time. We went to nursing homes and played bingo with them. We helped fingerprint little kids with the fire department and all that.
That's nice.
I look forward to going to conventions with them. We did a big Key Club convention where all these different schools came together. And this one year, I had a really good time at this one. I met a couple boys. Had a good time.
Oh, boy.
But I had an essay I had to write. I was like, just on the spot. I was like, here, write an essay. And I got 3rd freaking place out of all the whole state.
That's cool.
So I was pretty proud of myself. Yeah, Indiana District Key Club.
Yeah.
Is for me. And I loved my instructor with that, Miss Suler. She became quite a good friend. We did a lot of floats with them. And I remember one we did it was Christmas, and we were all reindeers, and we had these brown garbage bags that we put on.
Oh, boy. And
we had elves up on the thing, and my dad drove the truck and everything. So we all got to my house, and we all made the float at my house. So
yeah,
it was a lot of fun. So that was a lot of social things that I did.
Yeah, I didn't really, like I said, other than that, I didn't really do much in that way. Speaking of, well, like you're talking about getting awards, one of the only things I did was, I think it was, I can't remember if it was 6th or 7th grade, I did participate in the science fair. And for my school, for my grade school, I came in first place.
Nice.
I did a thing about solar energy. And then I went to like the district science fair, and I think there I came in like 3rd place or something, 3rd or 4th place. I came in like 3rd. No, I think I came in 4th place. And they had said that they thought I should have came in 3rd place, but they didn't believe that I did all this stuff myself. Like they were like, well, seems questionable that he really knows about all this stuff. His parents probably just did this for him, kind of thing. And that was typical. I was always running into that. I still do. I still run into people that doubt me on these things. He can't possibly know that. And I was like, you'd be surprised. But anyway, I mean, it was fine. I wasn't really looking to like go super far with that. It was just something I did. And that was probably it in terms of like school function stuff. But what I did look forward to, we did a lot, especially in grade school from kindergarten to 8th grade. We did a lot of like school trips and school function stuff like outside of school. We would go to like the Museum of Science and Industry. We would go to the zoo. We would go to Shed Aquarium. We would go to see even like movies and stuff. There were times, I remember one year they took a bunch of us and we went to some movie theater in Chicago, and we went and saw like an old version of Christmas Carol, the Scrooge story and stuff. It was like one of the old ones. And we'd all go see that. I always loved going on those trips. Like, I don't know why. I think because I didn't hang out outside of school with a lot of my fellow students and stuff, it was one of those opportunities to get to be a little more social with them outside of school, because we could, I don't know, it wasn't so strict in a way, you could talk and hang out. The ride on the bus there, would always be fun. My mom would be the chaperone a lot of times when she could. So that was cool and everything. And my mom was always like a PTA person. She was always on the PTA. So that kind of helped force me to be a little bit more social, and that helped in later years too, later years of grade school. Get to know other kids a little bit better, because I was always so shy and withdrawn and, kind of on my own that, I would have to be forced to be more social. And the other main way, and this is I've talked about this many times, but one of the things that I loved so much and I still remember so fondly, because it was like the main way that all of us got to be social outside of school with each other, were the skating parties. We used to have roller skating parties at a local roller rink just over, I was in Chicago, this was over in Indiana. And, it was funny because I remember them so well. And then like I find out now, I talk to people and they're like, oh yeah, your skating party was only like 3 hours long. Like each one, we'd have them once a month, between September and May, we would have once a month. And even though they were only 3 hours, I don't know, like I have so many memories of that, event happening like each month. Like I have really vivid memories of it, which is really weird. I don't know why they imprinted on me so well, but I just loved roller skating. There are certain songs that played at those roller skating parties that I still, when I hear them, I associate with being at the roller rink. That's why sometimes even when I play songs and I do old covers and stuff, I'll tell people, I'll be like, this is a couple skate song from the old roller rink days and everything. And I'm not just being funny. Like, I mean that. Like, I remember this song being a couple skate song back in 1984 or 1985 when I was at the Roller Dome. So that was probably my favorite and the thing that I looked the most forward to. As much as I dreaded going back to school, because we should emphasize that we didn't really say at the beginning. I mean, most kids, a lot of people are like, probably like, I hated school, I mean, I did too, I would scream and cry about not wanting to have to get up to go to school in the morning, and how much time it took up and all this stuff. But like now I like to look back, and that's the point of this show, is looking back and focusing on like the fond memories and the good stuff that imprinted on us and everything. And one of the main things was those skate parties. That was probably my favorite. And then my second favorite would be like the school parties that we would have. Like if there would be like a fair, you know, or like the book fair. Mm-hmm. Oh my God.
Gosh. That was
the book
bomb.
fair. Yeah, I know people that are going to get mad at us if we don't mention the book fair, the Scholastic Book Fair. When I would get so excited if it was like early in the morning, you know, like we've only just started school, and the teacher would come in, and all of a sudden he'd be like, all right, I've got these things to hand around. And he'd be like, oh, it's time for the book fair.
The whole thing.
Yeah,
like, oh my gosh, there's a whole book of books. I can't wait to go home and pick out every single one.
Exactly. Oh my God.
Mom, I need $200.
I know. Yeah, and I would always, like, my mom would give me money for that stuff, but I would never get as much as I actually wanted, you know. But she was good about buying me a lot of books and magazines, and that was the cool thing, is like even in the book fair leaflet things they had magazines you could get that were geared towards kids. Everybody, I'm sure, probably remembers Highlights. They had Highlights magazines, but they also had, for me, again, we're looking at 70s, 80s, it was like Dynamite and Pizzazz, and there were things like that and Bananas was another one, and these were ones that were made to be like People magazine or 16 magazine for young kids kind of thing, but they were always like super cleaned up, and there would be elements of like educational stuff in there too. Loved them. I've been a magazine fanatic since I was 4 or 5 years old. So, and anybody that's been to my house, you know, I literally have like hundreds and thousands of magazines, and it's a problem. But it started with that. It started with the Scholastic Book Fair, and then getting like Hardy Boys books. I think it was through the book fair that I discovered Choose Your Own Adventure books.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Getting those. I know for a lot of you probably got like Goosebumps and stuff like that.
I do remember certain books. I can't remember what they're called, but I can picture them in my head.
Okay.
Because I read them so much. Mine was like the Amelia Bedelia's.
Okay.
And I always had to pick out a couple of bookmarks for myself.
Oh yeah, well you could get all that.
And the posters.
You could get posters, you could get bookmarks, you could sometimes get stickers or erasers. Getting back to the supplies things, you could get the funny little erasers and stuff. There was all that stuff. I would have a hard time getting my mom to buy me that stuff. If it was a book, if it was like some sort of like kids novel thing, she'd be like, okay. And then I'd be like, and I want this poster and this eraser. And she'd be like, you don't need that stuff. Sometimes I could get it. And then, yeah, it was cool when like the stuff would come in, and we'd have to go to our school library to like pick it up, and we'd see like stacks of like the other stuff and be like, oh, that's cool. I wish I got that. And like, yeah, loved that. That was always something I very, very much looked forward to when the start of the school year would happen. And I'm trying to think what else there was. Well, I was talking about like events and functions. Like I loved like the class parties we'd have on certain holidays, or sometimes we'd even celebrate birthdays and stuff. That didn't happen all the time, but once in a while we would celebrate somebody's birthday, or even teacher's birthday would happen. But things like the Christmas assembly. Now, I'm not going to get too much into detail about the Christmas assembly, because you can go back and listen to old episodes of the Geeking Poetic Podcast where I tell my stories that are fraught with trauma and everything of the second grade Christmas assembly when I dressed up as Frosty the Snowman. This is now legend with a lot of people that know me. I have friends like Cole who still refer to me as Frosty, because she didn't even know me back then, but she just loves that story so much because it was a bad scene. It was not good. I tried, but
be a fly on that wall.
Oh my God. Yeah. Let's put it this way. It went down so badly that after I stormed off stage screaming and crying about how badly it went, my teacher went and back to the classroom. When all the kids went back, I wouldn't go back to class. When all the kids went back, and my teacher threatened the class and was like, I don't want anybody to ever mention this again to Larry. if I hear anybody teasing Larry about this or bringing it up or whatever, poking fun at him, you're going to be in so much trouble and everything. So, and they didn't. Like, I don't recall ever hearing anything more about it ever again. They were like, the teacher threatened people. That's how bad.
I will expel you.
Yeah, that's how bad my first experience on stage performing was the dreaded Frosty the Snowman performance. But aside from that, I enjoyed the assemblies. Did you like the assemblies and stuff?
I absolutely loved. I'm a performer. I didn't even know it until we started doing this. I love the assemblies.
It's true. You are, because when we started this show and we started coming up with the ideas for all our silly little skits and things we were going to do, she was like, oh God, I can't do any of that. I can't sing. I can't act. I can't blah, blah, blah. I can barely talk, she would say, and all this stuff. And then we started doing all that, and boy, it really came out. By the time
I still can't do any of those things, but I love it. I'll do it.
I think
badly, but I'll do it.
No, I think you do a pretty good job. I mean, you go and watch, anybody wants to see, go watch her when she was doing her version of the Joker and everything. That's great. That's great. Or when we did our spoof on Carrie and we dumped the bananas on your head and everything. Although there wasn't a lot of acting that had to go on.
No, that was pure hatred. That was real.
Yeah, that's true. But yeah, absolutely.
Yep. Yeah, so all those assemblies, learning the choreography, I was always down for all of that. I remember my school, some of the functions we had, because we were a very, very tiny school.
Right. So was mine.
We'd go out, I remember doing like a track and field day.
Okay.
Where you could win prizes. So I still have some of my athletic ribbons that I received. So I got third place in my track meets. So I used to be a runner. I could maybe run way back when. So I enjoyed, because I'm not competitive at all.
Oh my God.
So I really enjoyed these.
She's so competitive, folks.
I'm so competitive.
With every fucking little thing. Everything.
Yep. We would have, again, I was in Oklahoma, and we are known as the Sooners in Oklahoma because of the land run, because people would go before you were supposed to, so we were called Sooners. So it was a big deal, and we would have our land run days to kind of throw back to our heritage kind of thing. And again, it was like dressing up, and it was the potato sack races and the egg.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Trying to balance the egg and all that, all those kind of things. And again, not being competitive at all, I really enjoyed all those things. So, but I also enjoyed, like you said, the class trips and all that. And I remember two specifically. One was my senior trip, and we got to go to the water park. So that was fun, getting to go with my whole class to the water park, all the boys and stuff. So that was fun. But my most memorable trip was I think it's 4th grade, maybe 3rd grade.
Okay.
Again, Oklahoma, guys, okay?
Yeah.
And we had this old schoolhouse. It's a 1-room schoolhouse. We had to attend it for a day and pretend like we were students back in 1910.
Right.
So we had to dress up like old pioneers. We packed our lunches, and we had like a special little lunch pail we had to carry it in, and make sure, because we didn't have a refrigerator or anything like that, so we couldn't pack like yogurt or something like that.
Right.
Not that you could back then anyway. And we did school. We learned math. We had to write cursive, everything they would have learned back in 1910. And I got in trouble because I looked out the window, and I got in so much trouble. I was so upset because I was distracted then. And my teacher yelled at me, and I wasn't one to get yelled at. And I was not okay after that. I hated the whole day after that. But,
oh no.
But I was so mad. But I just looked for a second. So, but that back in 1910, you did not do that.
Oh geez.
So it was an experience, and I actually have my whole class picture here in our silly little outfits from 1910.
I gotta wonder, so if it was like so explicit that it was like, don't you dare even glance out that window, where the fuck was there a window?
Why
then?
are there windows?
Then why didn't they just pull like a shade or a curtain or something like that, because in 1910 they had curtains.
They had curtains, yeah. And then I got a little certificate here saying I graduated Rose Hill School in 1910 for my one day. So I didn't even realize I had this till I started digging everything. I was like, oh,
that's funny.
That's pretty cool. So that's my most memorable school trip from way back when.
Yeah.
So needless to say.
All right. So moving on to number 2. We're going to focus on things that I guess might be cheating a little bit, but this still had to do with back to school time and everything. We would look forward to the end of summer and the start of school for some other things. And in number 2, I'm going to bring up, how about the new seasons of like TV shows, especially like Saturday morning cartoons and after school shows and stuff like that, because that was sort of, I don't know, that was sort of like our life's blood for keeping us, interested and going. It's like, I just got to get through this day and do these stupid lessons and this test and everything so that I can get home. And if I'm home by 3:30, I can catch this new show that was starting, because I very much associate a lot of those shows with starting school, because I can remember, like, for example, I remember back being in whatever I was, 6th grade, I guess it was. Maybe it was 5th or 6th grade. I remember coming home from school one day, and it's, this was like early September, school just started, and coming home and turning on the TV and seeing that there was a G.I. Joe cartoon on. Now, I was already into G.I. Joe because the toys came out first, right?
Right.
And I didn't even know a G.I. Joe cartoon was going to happen. Like, I didn't know it was going to exist. And all of a sudden, I turned on the TV, and they're like, coming up next, G.I. Joe. I was like, what? And I was so excited, because this would have been, I guess this would have been 6th grade, I guess. So it was 1983. And I was like, oh, my God. And I was so excited about that. And then right around the same time, maybe like a week or so later, then I got home from school one day and it was like, here's a new program, He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. I was like, what? Oh my God, this is great. And then at the same time, it was like, here's another new cartoon, Inspector Gadget. And I was like, this show is awesome. And it was like I said, I associate the start of school with watching those shows and discovering them. Now, there was other stuff that would come on that I would watch after school too, like that would been around for years, like Woody Woodpecker and Tom and Jerry and Bugs Bunny and stuff. But it was always really exciting because we'd be bummed about the summer ending, of course. But the summer was, and I mean, TV's not the same now as it used to be, but summer was always the summer of reruns. So TV during the summertime wasn't usually all that exciting, you know what I mean? Like, it was all like stuff you'd be like, I've seen this already. So at the beginning of September, when you were starting school, it would be like, oh, here's the new cartoons, here's the new TV shows. And I'm sure for you later, you had the ones that would come out. I remember in the mid-late 80s, I remember when it was like after school you would have, they came out with all those afternoon Disney shows, because that's when they came out with like DuckTales. That's when they came out with Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers, Darkwing Duck, all that kind of stuff. Those were after school shows. And I remember kids, I remember my stepbrother being really excited when those would come on, and he'd like race to get home and be like, I got to watch Darkwing Duck, and stuff like that. So like that for me is a big core connected memory for back to school and like all those TV shows. And then they'd have, even in the evenings, you'd have like the new shows that would come on. Like I remember so clearly, like when things like Mork and Mindy first came out, and that would show on like Tuesday evenings and stuff like that. And then when they had Thursday evenings, when it was stuff like Family Ties and The Cosby Show and stuff like that later, like Who's the Boss and, Bosom Buddies and Perfect Strangers and all these shows. Like I remember them starting, they always started at the same, because it was fall, it was the new fall shows. Yep. So it was always so closely tied in with the start of a new school year for me, that when I watch those shows, or I think of those shows, if something comes on and it's like, if it's like Family Ties, and I'm like, oh yeah, 7th grade, like I associate it with 7th grade or 8th grade or, moonlighting. It's like, oh, that was 8th grade, and all that kind of stuff. So those were big. And then the same thing with the Saturday morning. Every time, it was always right around the first week of school when you just got all your supplies and you're getting ready to start, they would premiere the new Saturday morning cartoons and stuff. So I associate those Saturday morning cartoons strongly with what year of school and starting school and stuff like that. Like more so the start than like the end, It's like I can remember seeing Kid Video and Mr. T, the cartoon, at the start of the school year. And it kind of, you know what I mean? And that became like your shows, for that. That was so tied in with 6th grade, or the next year, the new ones. And then 7th grade. It was always tied in for me, especially because I was such a TV junkie, that I really tie those together. Do you have anything like that or not so much?
I have like certain shows I recall being cited getting home.
More so the after, okay, yeah.
Yeah, so like after school, my first one was always like usually Animaniacs.
Oh,
like
sure.
Pinky and the Brain is like, those are my go-tos. I can't miss Pinky and the Brain.
Right.
Freaking love them. They cracked me up.
Yep.
And then sometimes after that, it was like Boy Meets World and things like that.
Right. Sure. For you, it would have been more like, that early 90s and stuff. By that point, I was out of school. But yes, I do remember that.
High school, when I started driving so I could get home even faster. And I had to get home so I could watch Passions.
Oh, dear.
Yes. It was so bad. But I had to watch it. I couldn't not watch it. So I was like, what are they possibly get into now? What is this witch going to do? And... Ethan and it was
dear.
Yeah
soap operas. I can't front and pretend that I didn't watch the soap operas because I associate certain soap operas with certain years of school because 6th to 7th grade, maybe 6th through 8th actually, I watched because I would go home for lunch a lot of times.
Okay.
We didn't have closed campus through grade school, so 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, I would go home at lunch because by that point I was old enough to go home. Even if my parents were gone, I would go home and make my own lunch. I would watch Days of Our Lives. That would always come on at the lunchtime hour. Prior to that, lunchtime would have been things, if I would have watched things like The Great Space Coaster and Underdog and Tennessee Tuxedo. Those were always showing at lunchtime. So I watched that. And then later on, probably when I was in high school, I got into things like General Hospital and Another World. I watched Another World. Sometimes I watched One Life to Live, actually, but mostly it was General Hospital and Another World. And it's pretty ridiculous that I watched all those shows and everything.
Yeah, my soaps were big during the summer. My dad actually got me into the soaps.
Oh, okay.
But Passions was... very clearly I hurried home so I could watch it after school.
Yeah, and then when I got older, even when I was in high school and stuff, one of my after school shows was Jeopardy. I'd watch Jeopardy a lot and stuff.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Because again, I was still, even though I was like a metal kid or whatever, I was still a nerd, and I enjoyed watching Jeopardy and learning a lot of stuff from it and everything. So, all right, so we've made it to the last one, number 1 here. Now, by no means does this mean this is the most important one. In fact, it'd be pretty funny if we made this one the most important one because be like, well, that says a lot about us. No, we didn't put these in any kind of order, but this is just actually we probably went opposite.
Backwards?
I think number 5 was probably the most important for us, and now we're going to number 1. It's probably the least, but still important. And what is it? We're not talking about school supplies or clothes or TV shows or books or events. Nope. One of the things that we both agreed on that we were like, yep, that was something that was a big part of starting school and everything, whether it was for lunch or getting home and watching your Passions while I was watching He-Man or whatever, it is snacks. So yeah, like do you have certain snacks? Because I know I do. Do you have certain snacks that you totally associate with like going to school, like starting school, like these were my school time snacks?
I have one in particular.
Okay.
That it was definitely an after school snack that my stepsister got us hooked on.
Is it going to be something gross?
And I don't think we're alone in this because I've seen other pictures. I just saw somebody post it recently.
Okay.
And all you do is take a piece of bread, put a ton of butter on it, like a ton, okay?
Okay.
And then you're going to dump a whole bunch of sugar and cinnamon on top of it and eat it.
Okay, so not toasted.
Nope, just bread. Don't toast it.
Butter, cinnamon, and sugar.
Yep.
That's, wow. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's not what I
And then we'd go bounce off the walls for a few hours. Our parents would kick us out of the house.
Oh, dear. Yeah, I can understand why now. Yeah, that's a lot of sugar. Not that the things that I ate and consumed were much better, but no, for me, it was that my mom would, or my grandparents or whomever, would buy certain foods more specifically once the school year started. Like, I wouldn't necessarily get them as much like throughout the summer. You know what I mean? They'd be things that they would buy specifically with the thought of, well, this is something he could put in his lunchbox and take with him, or this is something he can easily eat when he gets home from school. So there were certain things that I just got more consistently during, like, especially at the start of the year and everything. There would be, my mom would load up on a bunch of stuff, like, okay, here's all like the back to school snack kind of things. So there were certain things for me. One of them would have been Hostess snacks. So, and Dolly Madison as well. Now that Dolly Madison and Hostess are like the same thing, but back in the day, so it would be like packages of like Ho-Hos and Ding Dongs, Twinkies and Snowballs and all that kind of stuff. Like, sometimes I might get those during the summer, but not so much. I associate those as specifically with back to school time. And I would get excited because I loved those snacks. And I would get excited knowing, like, well, at least I get back to having like those kind of things. Or small bags of, like they still have now, the tiny bags of like Fritos and the small bags of like Ruffles or Doritos and things like that. Like, I wouldn't get those throughout the summer. I mean, I might eat some potato chips and Doritos during the summer, but not that much. Like, my parents wouldn't buy those so much to be like just like around the house. I would only get that kind of stuff when it came time to, okay, we got to buy these things for lunches or again for after school kind of stuff. If I was home during the summer, it was usually more often than not, it was like homemade meals and stuff, you know, because I was home. So they wouldn't go and spend all that money on snacky type things. The snacks are so tied in with me with going back to school. And again, going back to like the lunch thing and stuff, I just have certain things that I specifically remember. I guess since you're talking about something that's like a little bit more homemade, this isn't quite homemade, but this isn't like your normal like Fritos or Doritos kind of thing. My thing is, especially when it came back to back to school time, is getting crackers, Ritz if I was lucky, saltines if I had to, and spreadable liverwurst. That was like, yeah, you're not a fan of the liverwurst, huh? You know, liver sausage, you know what I'm talking about? Braunschweiger or whatever it is. Yeah, like that was, my mom got me into that because she loves that. And she would like make crackers, like little sandwich crackers with like the liverwurst in there, maybe a little spread of like mayo on there as well and everything. So that was, and she would make those for me for after school as well. Like I would snack on those while I was doing my homework or watching cartoons, or not doing my homework and instead watching cartoons, which I was not supposed to be doing. So like that's like a big snack for me. At my grandparents' house, it was always, my grandma loved Chips Ahoy.
Okay.
So that was like a big snack for me. And again, not that I didn't spend time over at my grandma's house during the summer. I did, but not as much. Like I wasn't being fed at my grandma's house during the summer that much, you know, like I'd be over there and stuff, but not really being fed. But I would have to go over to my grandma's house after school every day. For a while there, for years actually, I would do that, and she would watch me until my parents would get home a few hours later. So I would often do my homework and watch some of my cartoons and stuff at grandma's house. So it was, a lot of my snacks were what grandma had available. And she didn't have a lot of junk food. She wasn't a junk, you know, a lot of grandmas aren't. She wasn't a junk food person, but she liked a cup of tea and cookies. And so she liked the Chips Ahoy and everything. So that, like, to me still, that's probably my number one after school snack that I have most tied into my brain there with school, start of school, and a snack is like a cup of milk, just like a little cup of milk and Chips Ahoy cookies. Mm-hmm. That was my after school snack.
Nice.
And then later I associate like with after school snacks and stuff. As I got older, when I was in like junior high and high school and stuff, 7-Eleven nachos, man. 7-Eleven nachos, that was the thing. And again, it's not that I didn't get them in the summer, but I really don't remember getting them that much in the summer because it's not like 7-Eleven was far from my house, but I didn't really venture over there that much. You know what I mean? Like, unless I was going specifically to a friend's house or to my grandparents' house. Like, I didn't just go hang out at 7-Eleven, but 7-Eleven was near my school.
Okay.
So, or even then when I was taking the bus later for high school and everything, 7-Eleven was just like a block down from where my bus would drop me off.
Nice. Okay.
So that's when like the 7-Eleven nachos became sort of like an after school snack thing for me. This was in like the later 80s, you know. Mm-hmm. That, and then if I had enough money that I could get a Slurpee with it, that was an awesome after school snack. What about did you have anything else other than your bread and butter and cinnamon sugar concoction?
I mean, it's kind of where my Taco Bell obsession became because I worked at Taco Bell my senior year. And I would go work right after. So that would be my immediate lunch or dinner, I guess, snack time before I started my shift. I'd have to get something.
I see.
And that's where it all began. Actually, it began way before that, but that's where it really like took hold.
Yeah, that explains a lot.
Yeah.
If you know anything about this girl here, is that she is a Taco Bell monster.
I'm a junkie.
She is a junkie.
It's bad. And then one other thing is, it is during the school year, beginning of it, because we were all adjusting to this new schedule, that the cereal Tang incident happened.
When your mom put Tang in your cereal
instead of
sugar, thought it would be okay,
and just didn't bother to tell me until I put the milk in and started eating. I was like, "What is this? What is even happening right now?" She's like, "I didn't think you'd notice." It's like, it's freaking Tang. What do you mean? It's not even sweet. It's tangy. It's in the name. So
that's funny.
It scars me for breakfast.
Oh, man. You know what's funny about that is I hadn't even thought about this until now. That's another thing. And this is more, I guess, having more to do with the style of it than the food itself. But another thing I very strongly associate with back to school when you're talking about breakfast are the small cereal boxes. Mm-hmm. You could get like the multi-pack of like 12 of them or 8 of them or whatever it was, because that was the only time I had those.
Okay.
Like I didn't have those again during summer. It was like my parents would be like, well, we're not going to get those because he's just home, you know, so I would just eat out of the big cereal box kind of thing, you know. They didn't. But then when back to school would happen, especially because there were some times there, especially after a certain point, I think when my mom and dad both started working, they were working early. Like they would have to be at work by 7. Mm-hmm. So they wouldn't be there for me for breakfast, to give me breakfast and stuff. So they would end up like dropping me off at my grandmother's or my aunt's house or something. So they would buy those multi-packs of the little Kellogg cereal things, those little 1-serving boxes of them. And it would be like, well, here's your breakfast. And then I'd have to go and sit wherever it was that I was that morning before school. And I would have to eat my bowl of cereal. So like, that was the only time I had them. It was the only reason they got those little ones is because it was more convenient. They could literally just hand me that and be like, when you get to your grandma's or you get to your aunt's house here, you know, pour that in and, you know, just pour milk on it and then you got your cereal and stuff. So yeah, that's funny you mentioned that because I hadn't have thought about that until just now. But that is so tied in with like going back to school because I don't remember ever having those small cereal boxes any other time except for that, you know, when it was like back to school time. I know this has gone on really, really long, but you know,
it was fun.
It's a lot of years worth of memories there. You're talking 12 years, you know, at least 12 years worth of school memories there for us with all this stuff. We would love to hear from you. Make sure you let us know in the comments below what you thought of this. Like, what were your memories? What do you agree? Are there certain things that you totally tie in with back to school that you did not hear us mention or feature here on the episode? Because we would love to know. I don't doubt there's going to be something somebody's going to say, and we're going to be like, oh my gosh,
no, I totally forgot
how did we
about
not
that.
think of that? So yeah, thank you so much if you stuck through this long ass conversation we had about this. But hey, we haven't done this in quite a long time, so it was just fun to do.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll be back hopefully soon. We got Halloween. It's going to be here before we know it, which is ridiculous. So we will probably be we always do something for Halloween, some real talk or some kind of thing like that we will do for you. And hopefully we'll see you before then. And make sure you check out all our other things, our music stuff, our trivia things, our TikTok. She's doing TikTok videos, Instagram. We've got all kinds of stuff. Hit subscribe so you'll be notified when that stuff comes out. In the meantime, I'm Larry.
I'm Megan.
We'll see you again soon.
Bye, guys.